Now let's do question 6. SSN Limited is a wood burner service company and has the following stock movements for part number CC1971 into and out of its store for the month of February 20X1. So we have these receipts and issues. So the issue was done on 14th February. The question says, complete the table below for the issue of inventory on 14th February. Enter the values to the nearest pound. Enter the values to the nearest pound. All right. Good. Now, what we have now here is based on FIFO and LIFO. Remember, FIFO is first in, first out. So this is what has been issued, and this is what came in its order before the issue. First in. So the first one that came in is this one. So this will be the first one to go out. So that 1,375 units that are going out under FIFO will come from here. So first of all, we'll then need to establish the cost per unit for this receipt on 1st February. The cost per unit. So the cost per unit would be 3,750 divided by 1,500. Okay. This is 3,750 divided by 1,500. So what you have is 2.5. So the cost per unit here is 2.5. So when calculating for FIFO then here, this one here, this will be the 1,375 units. Each will be valued at 2.5. So this is the 1,375 units valued at 2.5 each. This is 1,375 times 2.5. So that will be 3,437. Like that, 3,437.50. Okay. Now I would add another additional column here for the calculation of closing inventory. The calculation of closing inventory here, for you to get a figure for closing inventory under FIFO, you will get the total cost of what came in minus what has gone out, whose value is this. So you need to add all this. When you add all this, what we actually got is 10,015. So the closing inventory here then will be 10,015 minus the 3,437.50. Okay, 10,015. So what we'll get is 6,000. We get 6,577.50. Okay, so that is under FIFO. And then we move to LIFO. Under LIFO, LIFO says last in, first out. So this is the order in which they came before this was issued. So the first one to go out was the last one to come in, which is this 700. And so from this 1,375, the first one to go out is this 750 units. Okay, it will be this 750 units. So you will see the 750 units. The 750 units, the cost of these 750 units is 2,250. After we remove the 750 units, the number of units that remain here will be 625. 625. So the next to go out would be this 300 from the 625. So this 300 here. This 300 here, again, the cost of this 300 here, you can see it is 975. So after issuing these 750 and the 300, the number of units remaining to cover this whole amount here will be 325. So this 325 will actually come from here, from this 1500. And we have established that the cost per unit from this 1500 is 2.5. So this 325 each will be valued at 2.5. So I'll say 325 then times 2.50. And this is what gives me the total figure there. So this is 325 times 2.5. I'll get 812.5. So the total cost will be the sum of the three. Okay. That will be the 975 plus 2250 plus 812. So the sum of the three will be 4,000. That will be 4,037.50. This is exactly what comes here. So the closing inventory here will be the total cost of what came in, 10,015, minus the 4,037.50. And what you will get here will be what you'll get here will be 5,977.50. Okay, good. Then part 2 of the question, the closing inventory has been valued at 5,977. The dash method has been used. For this 5,977 is the LIFO method. So this one here will be the LIFO method. Good. Then we'll move on to the next one. Caruthers Limited pays their direct labor force a time rate of £12 per hour for a standard 39-hour week. If any of the workforce work in excess of 39 hours in a week, an overtime rate of time and a quarter is paid. However, the company is thinking of moving from a time rate system to a piecework system, paying £11 per completed unit. Complete all the calculations in the table below for both Chris and Sue. Enter values to 2 decimal places. If no overtime payment is due, you should enter 0.00 for that employee. Great. So let's start with the first one, Chris. Chris worked for 39. Remember, the standard hour week is 39. So anything in excess of 39 attracts an overtime. So Chris has worked for 39, which means there is no overtime. So the overtime premium here would be 0.00. Now at this point, it is worth mentioning here that there's a difference between overtime and overtime premium. I think I've taught you this before. There's a difference between overtime and overtime premium. Now, when you are dealing with overtime, you basically get the normal working hours, which is 39 times 12. Then you get the excess, any excess. Now, in which case, Chris doesn't have excess here. But when you look at Sue, Sue has excess, 44 minus 39. Sue actually have extra 5 hours. That 5 hours is the overtime. So if you are dealing with overtime, then that 5 hours will be paid at the overtime rate, which is time and a quarter. Time and a quarter is 1 and a quarter, which is 1.25. So 1.25 of 12. In fact, let me just calculate here. The overtime rate is 1 and a quarter, which is 1.25 times the normal rate of 12. When you calculate this, you'll find that it's actually 15. So the overtime rate is actually 15. So if we're dealing with overtime, I have said that there's a difference between overtime premium and overtime. Let me just bring it here. So if you are dealing, for example, with SUE, yeah. We are dealing with SUE where you have basic wage and overtime. What you have here is basic wage and overtime premium. So what I'm showing you is a difference between the two. A difference between the two. So if you are dealing with basic wage and overtime, not overtime premium, what you'll basically do is for SUE, you'll take the normal 39 hours. The 39 normal working hours will be paid at the normal rate of 12. Okay. So the 39 times 12 will give you 468. Then you realize that SUE has worked for 44 hours, which is more than 39 by 5 hours. So he has worked extra 5 hours. This extra 5 hours will then be paid at the overtime rate of 15, because the rate of overtime that I've showed you here is 15. So what you have here is 15 times 5. Which is 75. Okay. So you will see here that the gross wage, will be the basic wage of 468 plus the overtime of 75. Which will give you 543. But this is how you do if you have overtime. Now here you have overtime premium. Overtime premium. Whenever you have overtime premium here, you calculate the overtime premium per hour. The overtime premium per hour is the excess that you pay on overtime in comparison with the normal rate. The normal rate is 12. Overtime is paid at 15. So the overtime premium is the excess, which is 15 minus 12. So we have overtime premium of 3. Okay. The overtime premium per hour is £3. So when you are calculating the overtime premium here, it will be based on the extra time that he has worked, which is 5 hours. So this will be the 5 hours multiplied by the overtime premium of 3. So what you will have here as overtime premium is 15. And then the basic wage here will not be based on the normal working hours. You calculate this based on the 44 hours paid at the normal rate. The excess hours have been paid at the excess amount of 3, which is why we have overtime here. So this one here will be 44 times the normal rate of 12. So 44 hours multiplied by the normal rate of 12, you get 528. Okay. Right. Then of course for Chris here, the gross wage will be 528 plus 15, which will be 543.00. Now for Chris here, we said Chris has worked for normal working hours. There is no excess, so there is no overtime, neither overtime premium. So this will be 39 hours paid at the normal rate of 12, which we have said this one will give you 468.00. So 468 plus 0, you have here 468.00. Very good. Then of course, when you turn to the piecework here, piecework is based on the number of units at the rate per unit, which is 11. So this one here will be 45 times 11. 45 times 11. This gives you 495. And this one here will be 50 times 11. It gives you 550.00. Right? Good.